The meeting is streaming.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order this regular council meeting for Monday, May 9th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that with respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin speaking people, and we honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. This evening, we have one member of council who is attending electronically. That is Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Parkinson, can you just acknowledge you can hear us and we can hear you?
All good, Your Worship.
Okay. Thank you. Everyone else is sitting at the table. So I will look, first of all, for approval of the near-term, long-term, and regular council meeting agenda. If there is no errors, omissions, or questions, I'll assume moved unanimously. I'm not seeing any. So be it. Moving on to Mayor's message. The only thing I have is just one quick letter that I have from the Sauk School District, and it is to council. On behalf of the school district, please accept our sincere thanks and appreciations for the donation of $1,100, which will help support the Royal Bay Secondary School dry grad. A tax receipt is attached. So very much appreciate that. Moving on to adoption and receipt of minutes, looking for adoption of the special council meeting minutes of May 2nd. Please, thank you, moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Any errors, omissions, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any in opposition? No one opposes. Moving to receive the Board of Variance for January 25th. The Waterfront Coastal Process Committee meeting from November 25th. And so I'm going to assume that that's a mistype, that it should be November 25th, 2021. Since we have, hello? Thank you. Okay.
Correct.
We're going to say 2021, and the report of the public hearing for May 3rd, 2022. Are there any? There are. So, Councillor, actually, I think I need a motion to receive, and then I can go to questions. So I get a motion to receive. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Jansen, second by Councillor Logan. Discussion. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Just the report of the public hearing speaks to there being 2 letters, but it does not include the letters, nor does it include any representation of what the letters said.
If I can address, thank you. They're attached to the public hearing agenda, but we can change the report of public hearing just to give a brief description of what the letters related to.
Yeah, I think the purpose of the report is to provide the information. So thank you. That would be great.
Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to public participation. I do have a public statement, but I won't read it unless we have people wishing to speak. Do we have anyone online?
We have nobody registered to speak.
Okay, and it doesn't look like we have anybody in the public or in the audience. So that will take us to new business. 6.1. This is regarding BC Hydro presentation of future powered by water.
Thank you, Worship. As Council is aware, the city is currently reviewing its climate change policies with the goal of creating a new low carbon resiliency plan later this year. This plan will contain strategies designed to both reduce greenhouse gas emissions and the city's exposure to the risks of climate change, such as extreme heat events. To help us understand how BC Hydro can support this shift and work with our local development community to achieve our climate goals, Ted Olenek, Manager of Community Relations, Vancouver Island and Sunshine Coast, as well as his colleague Dan St. Onge, Manager of Major Distribution Load Interconnections, has kindly offered to address council with a presentation. With that, Your Worship, I ask that Mr. Olenek and St. Orange be given the floor. Thank you.
There we go. So yes, I feel like this is my first presentation since COVID. I feel like I've been caught in a cave for the last camera. In the old days, you used to bring a Proxima, just a projector, and take 15 minutes to upload the presentation. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to do a presentation on electrification, our plan to help with reducing greenhouse gases and help communities and individuals meet their greenhouse gas or reduce their carbon footprint. UBCM this year, we're hoping to have a bit of a presence, and part of the presence is tying it into their theme, which is value of one, power of many. And we're thinking about that today. And it really boils down to, much like the old adage of act locally, think globally, act locally. So it's one individual, one community, one planet. We've seen what climate change has done here on the coast. This last summer was quite an event for us, impacting our equipment, and not just in the summer, but of course, year after year in the wintertime. We know we're going to get more storm events. They're going to be more intense and they're going to be more frequent. So the issue is for all of us is how do we prepare to deal with those effects, and what can we do to try and lessen the impact and the reduction and help with our reduction of greenhouse gases, which contribute to the effects of climate change. I think University of Victoria recently put out, it was 1.2 degrees Celsius that BC, all regions of the province have been impacted by climate change, by global emissions, 1.2 degrees in every part of the province. And we've seen, as I say, the effects of that this last summer. And greenhouse gas emissions per person in this province have increased since 2015. The right one. So the BC government has put forward the Clean Energy Plan. That was in 2018. It's a plan. They're highly attuned to the challenges we face, and we're working with them to try and deal with it. Their plan launches Clean BC in 2018, addresses the work required to help all sectors meet the challenges that we face. Buildings, healthier, more efficient buildings, transportation, cleaner transportation, better air quality, industry, cleaner industry that cuts pollution. And it's a plan that goes back to helping citizens, industry, and local government. BC Hydro can help Clean BC meet its goals. Right now, we have only in the province, we use about 19% of the energy consumption in this province is through the use of electricity. The other 80%, whether driving a vehicle or heating a home, is met by using fossil fuel sources. BC Hydro can support fuel switching to reduce the reliance on other sources. 98% of our electricity we generate is from clean or renewable resources. Reducing greenhouse gases by 930,000 tons per year. That equals about 200,000 cars off the road, which I think is equal to the number of cars trying to get over the Malhat on a long weekend. So, and that's part of our plan. And I know going forward, we'll be working closely with local government to try and help them reduce their energy, carbon footprint. And I think Dan will be going forward onto the next slide. Dan, are you there?
I am there. Yep. Can you hear me okay, Ted?
Dan, oh, there we go.
All right, perfect. All right, so yes, BC Hydro, we have our electrification plan, which is really a 5-year plan to support Clean BC greenhouse gas reduction targets. That plan is available on our website at bchydro.com. But what it encompasses is really a number of financial incentives for customers, as well as process improvements that we're making to make it easier for customers to get connected. Next slide, please. So investing in electrification. So in terms of the financial incentives for larger developments or commercial and industrial customers, what we have available is study funding to review how greenhouse gas can be reduced and how those impacts or what impacts that will have to the customer's power requirements, and in effect then, you know, how that's going to impact the interconnection to the BC Hydro system. As well, we have funding for the design and construction of interconnection to the BC Hydro system. This is targeted at fuel switching, as well as attracting loads that could be located elsewhere, either elsewhere within Canada or within the world, really. So a lot of that is directed at new tech, for example, carbon capture, hydrogen fuel cells, those sorts of things. As well, we have rates. Sorry, we're still on that last slide. I'll be real quick here. We also have some rate incentives. So discounted rates in the near to short or near to medium term. And again, that's targeted at fuel switching and fleet electrification. As well, we have incentives for individuals. We've got the heat pump rebates and electric vehicle rebates going on right now. Next slide, please. All right, so then how do we service this new load that we're getting through electrification? So first off, we have our electric tariff, which are the terms and conditions for taking service on the distribution system. And really it is set up so that we're recovering cost so that our ratepayers aren't subsidizing the connection of large customers, so that there's no negative impact to rates. So larger customers pay for extension of the BC Hydro system to their location or property, as well as any upgrades required in order to facilitate the interconnection. So those costs get offset by BC Hydro contribution. So we'll contribute to the upfront capital cost, and this contribution is based on future revenues, which we expect to receive from the customer. If those upfront capital costs are not fully offset by the BC Hydro contribution, there's a couple of things that come into play. First off, you know, based on the last slide, the customer may be eligible for some incentives through the Electrification Plan. And then furthermore, via our tariff, they may be eligible for refund through our extension fee refund program, or Pioneer program, some people know it as. And really that means that if new customers connect to the infrastructure that was constructed for the customer, which we are currently dealing with, then they may be eligible for refund. Sorry, we're still on that slide. I had a couple more bullets to go through there. So we also obviously invest in our system. So when customer projects do come through, we often take the opportunity to upsize infrastructure on BC Hydro's time. This allows us to further improve the system by, you know, creating additional capacity or improving safety or reliability. And so the capacity part of it often gets talked about. So we certainly do have capacity. The issue is sometimes just where that capacity is needed. So often extension or upgrades will be required in order to bring that capacity to the particular location. This is particularly true for large requests on the distribution system. So in this case here, just as an example, I've circled the Royal Bay development in yellow in this image, and we have the Colwood substation further to the northwest, I guess there, which is about a few kilometers as the crow flies away from the development. And so as that development grows, we're going to have to continue to push capacity towards it from the substation. So there will be some upgrades required, for example, for these types of developments to create that capacity. And one other thing that can impact costs for these developments, not only the amount of capacity that's required, but also the type of infrastructure. So overhead versus underground. Overhead is much less costly than underground, but in some cases, underground is required. So if BC Hydro is driving it to go underground, it would be because there's no space for overhead. Alternatively, often what happens is that the customer themselves wants it to be underground, either for aesthetics or because they're or because of permitting, such as the development permit requires all servicing to be underground. All right, next slide, please, and back to you, Ted.
I don't know what's going on. There we go. I guess this last slide really is just how we can work with you. There are opportunities, there are programs with local government and through Clean BC as well. I can provide those, and as part of the presentation, there's a list of organizations, local government working with staff and with elected officials to help implement these. Buildings and transportation have a variety of electrification services and incentives available to support you to fuel switch. You can partner with us to profile and share these incentives with your businesses and industry and community. There's peer networks, as I mentioned. There's opportunities there for us to help you reduce your carbon footprint. That's it. Great. Thank you for the presentation. I will I'll look to council for questions. I will go to Councillor Baxter first.
I'm not sure if you know this, but we already have a history of working together on this issue. Through the Solar Colwood program, BC Hydro provided funding for Solar Colwood to assist people to get ductless split heat pumps installed. And I think there were only 120 that we provided funding for, but every single one of them was taken up by a citizen in Colwood and are now operating. And probably those people are really happy during the heat dome.
It rings a bell to me, but yes.
Yeah, we also worked together on the technology for public EV stations, which wasn't all that familiar to anybody in those days. But a branch of BC Hydro, I believe, designed the stations for the city. So I hope we can carry on that kind of cooperation to help with the problem. And I'm glad you included the quote by Simon Donner. I'm not sure that that's on the first page of your slide deck. I'm not sure most people understand that the temperatures will keep rising as long as we keep adding CO2. Mm-hmm. And even after we stop, it'll take a while to slow down. So the heat dome, you said in the presentation, led to record-breaking demand. So it was higher than winter demand.
No, not higher than winter demand. It was the highest summer demand. We're winter peaking operation where our biggest demand will come in the wintertime when the lights are on, Christmas lights are on, when the heat's cranked up. That's when we use our most electricity. In the summer, we tend not to have used that much in the past. Just open a window, a nice breeze, and maybe a light at 10 o'clock at night, and that's about it.
Okay. So how comfortable is BC Hydro with its ability to meet the demand of full electrification of vehicles, not just in the sense of being able to produce that much electricity, but having the distribution system that can provide it to where it's needed?
Dan, did you want to go?
And I think that goes back to the comment I made about capacity, in that we certainly do have capacity, but there will be extension of our BC Hydro system, or sometimes upgrades of our distribution system that are required in order to facilitate. So it's location dependent is what it comes down to.
So there may be increases in local capacity that you need to provide as more and more people adopt electric cars.
Exactly. Yep.
And I assume the same would apply to full electrification.
Correct.
Of other things.
And there'll be a rate structure as well to encourage, I mean, it's all through the BC Utilities Commission. Will there be time of use encouraging charging at night or anything like that?
So there will be time of use rates.
I think it's before the BC Utilities Commission.
Good, because it has been denied in the past, and yet I saw it as inevitable and a good idea as well. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your presentation.
Councillor Kobayashi's next. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just thank you very much. Short and sweet. Got the message across. Just on one of your slides there, I think you got a small tiny error there. Just on the third slide, you said 60% reduction by 2020. I think you probably meant 2040, right? Do you see that on the bottom there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's come and gone. So the very last bullet.
It might be, okay. I'll check.
Small minor thing. I have a question, I guess. You know, I don't know if this is a fallacy or not. I hear this statement all the time from some of the naysayers. You know, if we were to go totally electric, you know, we had all the electric cars here in BC. I always hear this statement, right? And I don't know where it comes from, and I don't know how true it is. But they said even with Site C and Commission, if we were able to turn the switch on and go all electric, we need another Site C. Is that a true statement or not? Do we have enough power, or do we have to, you know, build more dams to go 100% electric here in BC?
Well, that's all part of our electrification plan. We have the capacity, certainly right now, with the resources we have, we're going to be adding Site C.
Yeah.
And if more industry decide to come here, whether it's data banks, I've seen Bitcoin operations wanting to come to the province as well. But whatever it is, certainly we would have to have a new call for electricity if that's required. So I have to keep looking up to get the word from above. Dan, did you have anything to add?
No, I think you nailed it there, Ted.
And okay, so thank you very much. Just so my next question, I was really interested in that one where that you're potentially looking at partners or you know, projects to deal with hydrogen production. I guess that's compressed hydrogen. I would assume that's what you're doing, electrolysis using water or hydroelectricity. Are you actually working with partners on that right now? Is projects happening with hydrogen right now?
I'm not familiar with any, Dan, are you?
There certainly are. I'm not too sure that we're partnered. I don't think we are, but there are customers that are taking using our electricity and doing some R&D on the hydrogen side. I'm honestly not too sure if we have any large scale production going on yet in BC, but there's certainly a number of smaller R&D like facilities.
It's certainly a big part of the provincial government's plan as well to promote hydrogen as well.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Two small things. One, is BC Hydro finished with burning gas to produce electricity? Because I still remember the steam plant across from Port Moody growing up as a kid.
Yeah, Burrard Thermal. No, yeah, that's not being used. I mean, we're 98% green. There are places up in the north, in the interior. I think Fort Nelson is one. And I know we have used the one in Campbell River. It's a private company. It's not ours, but we've used them to help us in the past, and we're negotiating with them to see if they can help us get through this period.
We still have some
diesel generation.
Diesel generation up north and in smaller communities. Yeah.
Yeah, we're working and trying as part of the, going forward, what can we do to help communities unplug from diesel, whether battery storage or other forms of generation, maybe it's a hydro generation that can be used.
Yeah, tough one. Now, this might be big picture, and I don't expect you to have a ready answer, but I've heard directly from some of our local developers saying it's more cost effective to put gas appliances into homes they're building here in Colwood. Are you competing with that? Is that accurate, or where's the truth in that?
Well, it's not cost effective, in other words, cheaper, because there's the cost to add the infrastructure. And we're a regulated utility, and we approach it through our regulator with BC Utilities Commission, how we set up and how we design our system and how we apportion the costs.
Sorry, I think it was per unit as far as cost of the hardware and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they found more cost effective to go with the gas side of the.
It may be cheaper, but I guess that's more than, is it cheaper in the long run? Right. I mean, that's what the whole issue of the climate debate and why we're going forward with what we're doing. It's not just about money now. It's about what can we do to, you can be penny wise, pound foolish.
Sure.
As the saying goes. I think that's our.
I don't think
our
you need to
approach there.
convince us. You need to convince them.
Well, I mean, we're also working with local government to ensure that Vancouver has said no new natural gas, and then I'm almost looking at that as well. It's just, no, this is the line in the sand. We're not crossing it.
Yeah.
And this is what we have to do.
Yeah, a generation ago, they got rid of the wood burning fireplaces and stoves and stuff like that. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Dan, did you have?
Yeah, all good. Thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask you about whether you're considering any programs to incentivize EV charging for electric vehicles in stratas. A lot of the new buildings, say in the last 5 to 10 years, have been strata buildings built on transit corridors, some of them. And generally, once they're built and the people are in, they're fairly reluctant to look at the cost of new infrastructure for EV charging. But the new residents who are moving into those buildings are wanting to be able to drive electric vehicles and be able to put in that charging. And sometimes the way the stratas are set up, that's more difficult. Are there any incentives contemplated for trying to bring some of our not so old but not so new buildings up to our future proof standards?
Dan, did you have anything? I have a more general answer. I don't have anything specific. Do you have anything specific?
I don't believe that there's anything specifically targeted at that at the moment. Our incentive for interconnecting to the BC Hydro system or renovation even would require a fairly significant load to be added. 2 megawatts is the threshold, so it's really more targeted at the larger commercial or industrial users even. So it would need to be a fairly significant load there. Certainly on the studies side of things, if the strata was looking at a study for the building as a whole, that could be incorporated into it. But for the connection piece, to my knowledge, there's nothing specifically targeted at adding EV to existing buildings at the moment.
I know it's on the radar. It comes up in meetings and discussions, internally and external discussions that I've heard about that whole issue. It certainly is a challenge because they're going to be in urban environments, and you'll see a lot more EVs proliferate in urban environments.
So I just wonder, can you tell me a little bit more about the commercial or industrial 2 megawatt level? So is there anything that would incentivize, say we have some new commercial areas in Royal Bay that we're developing, and one of the concerns is the cost of putting in EV charging infrastructure. Is there anything that BC Hydro would incentivize that type of infrastructure so that there would be a public facility?
Dan, did you have anything on that?
Yeah, so if I understand it correctly, sorry, the public thing kind of threw me off a little bit at the very end, but if I understand the question correctly, essentially we could look at the commercial area as a whole with you and see what kind of loads are coming on. And if there are, if there's enough GHG reduction, really enough fuel switching to account for 2 megawatts of power required, then it could be eligible for our incentive, which would be a threshold of a minimum $2 million. On the interconnection side, we would cover 50% of that if it is connected by, I believe it's 2026. On our BC Hydro website there, it's called the Clean BC Facilities Electrification Fund. And we can certainly provide a link to that just with a little bit more information, but it depends a little bit about how it's structured. Like it is supposed to be towards a single customer. So if it's, a single developer developing, a large commercial area, then that could certainly come into play. But sorry, I'm not too sure if I answered your question there or not.
No, that's great. Thank you.
There are, if I could add, there are programs. We've put in our EV charging stations. We're not there to make every community happy by putting them in each community. We have that request. We put them where people are traveling to make it facilitate the travel, that people can go from one part of the province, one part of the island to the other. For communities that haven't been included yet, there are programs, I think, with Clean BC and with Natural Resources Canada, the federal government, to help alleviate the cost. So private companies could do it. Municipalities could do it as well if they wanted to add more.
Great. Thank you.
Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to assure Councillor Day that there's lots of programs for existing stratas to get EV up and running. I'm in the midst of working with some people in our strata, and one of the incentives is to hurry up because there's a lot of good grants out there. Some from BC Hydro, some from provincial government, but certainly it's a hot topic and there's lots of people working on it. We're not the first. It's a little off topic. Sorry, Your Worship.
Thank you. No, that's great. I guess I'll just talk. I'll talk a little bit about Royal Bay itself. Royal Bay, Latoria South. We're hoping to electrify rather than be it natural gas, but it becomes cost prohibitive because of it being. And you talked in one of your previous slides about cost recovery, and it's my understanding that, for example, if Latoria North individuals who presently are on natural gas and wish to switch to electric on their heat pump, that it would be the cost to BC Hydro to make that. So when you're dealing with an individual, BC Hydro eats that cost. But when we're talking about a major development such as Latoria North, or excuse me, Latoria South, we're putting that cost onto the developer, which basically means we put it back onto the resident. And that doesn't help with our affordability. And I realize this isn't anything that BC Hydro themselves can do directly. That'll have to be through the BC government around tariff changes and things along those lines. But if you want to comment on that at all, or the challenges that we have as we try and green our communities and understand as we build out how we do that through using BC Hydro without it being cost prohibitive.
I'll look to Dan first.
I think just from my perspective first, we're certainly more than willing to work with the developers and look at different scenarios and see if there truly is a difference in cost to connect. I'm not sure in this case that there is. I don't believe that we looked at a scenario of full electrification versus a scenario with natural gas. I could certainly be mistaken, but that's to my knowledge anyway. So that would be my first point would be, let's just work with the developers and see if there truly is a difference.
So sorry to interrupt, but it was my understanding, talking to Gablecraft, it was my understanding that it would be like a $2 million substation that would be required to support Latoria South if we went from natural gas to electrification.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, great. I'm sure they'll be thrilled. hear that. So that is it. I'm not seeing any other questions. So thank you very much. Very much appreciate the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Moving on to 6.2, sediment transport and beach nourishment. This is a recommendation from the April 28th, 2022 Waterfront Coastal Process Committee. May I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, second by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 6.3, our manager of finance regarding our 2021 consolidated financial statements. Ms. Bovin, or is it Ms. Hempting?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it's me speaking. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. I'm just going to share my screen, so just give me a moment, please. Okay, so if I've done this correctly, you should be able to see my PowerPoint presentation. Is that correct?
You have not done it correctly.
Uh-oh. I even tested this. Okay, just a second here. There we go.
Yeah, now, there we go. We're in presentation mode.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. So the purpose of this presentation tonight is just to complement the financial statements that are attached to your agenda. So I've just got a few quick slides here. So the city's financial statements are presented on a consolidated basis, and they include 100% of the city's operations and capital, as well as our proportionate share of the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society, which changed in 2021. We decreased slightly to 21.25% from the 21.34% that we had in 2020. So the next few slides are going to provide a brief overview of 2021 operations compared to the budget, and then how those results affected our financial position. So this slide specifically shows the change in the city's financial position as a result of the 2021 operations. The detailed amounts shown on this slide are included on page 48 of the agenda, which is page 1 of the financial statements document. The city's net financial asset position has improved by nearly $16 million since last year, as a result of the changes in financial assets, financial liabilities, and non-financial assets, which includes tangible capital assets or TCAs. So you can see on the slide, financial assets have decreased a small amount by $462,000. That is comprised primarily of a $1.45 million increase in receivables, primarily related to an increase in grant receivables. And then that increase was offset by a decrease in total cash and investments of $1.9 million. And a portion of that is actually detailed on page 51 of the agenda, or page 4 of the financial statements. Financial liabilities have increased by $103,000, and there are several fluctuations that caused that. So some of the most notable are a change in accounts payable and accrued liabilities, which decreased by $1.4 million. And that was primarily due to government payables are $3 million lower than they were at the same time at the end of 2020. Primarily due to school tax that due to COVID in 2020, the province had required us to pay less upfront. And then that $3 million reduction was offset by an increase in trades accounts payable as a result of capital project invoices outstanding at the end of the year. Another highlight is deferred revenue increased by $833,000, and that's primarily due to DCCs of just over $1 million, offset by a decrease in West Shore Parks and Rec Society's deferred revenue of $331,000. Refundable deposits increased by $1.4 million, the majority of which is an increase in security deposits related to development. Debt decreased by $838,000 as a result of payments. And that does us for the financial liabilities. So we'll move into the non-financial assets, which includes the tangible capital assets. So this is where the bulk of the change resulting in the increase in accumulated surplus took place. So TCAs have increased by 16.7 million as a result of net acquisitions of 18.7 million, which includes nearly $11 million in developer contributed assets, less a change in the accumulated amortization of 2 million. Other non-financial assets have decreased by 246,000, and that's primarily due to a $215,000 write-down in the gravel inventory as a result of a professional survey. So overall, all these changes have resulted in an annual surplus of 15.9 million. So moving on to operations or income statement numbers. This slide shows how the operations actualized compared to budget. So the blue bars show the 2021 budget. The red bars show the 2021 actuals, and the green bars are just comparables for the 2020 actuals. The detailed amounts are shown on page 49 of the council agenda and page 2 of the financial statements document. So overall, the revenue section you can see is on the left-hand side of this slide. The revenues are just over 41 million and 2 million over budget. So notable variances from budget include 329,000 increase or over budget. So we collected 329,000 more in user charges. And that's primarily as a result of the West Shore Parks and Rec Society's user charges coming in at 370,000 over budget. And that their budget was reduced as a result of COVID, and their actuals were higher than they anticipated. Overall investment income was over budget by 141,000, and 297,000 of the investment income was transferred to reserves and deferred revenue. Conditional government transfers are 2.6 million under budget, and this is primarily as a result of the 2021 budget, including the 3.6 million in grant funding for the Galloping Goose project, for which the funding wasn't secured until 2022. So nothing was recognized in 2021. And that was offset by provincial funding that was received in 2021, but was not budgeted for. And I just want to note too that this conditional government transfer line item doesn't affect the general operating surplus that we'll talk about in a later slide for the year. And that's because it's all related to tangible capital assets. So the next change that's noteworthy is developer contributions were 4.1 million over budget. So this is primarily due to what I mentioned before. We had 11 million or nearly 11 million in tangible capital assets taken on by the city in 2021 as a result of development. And that value is not recorded, sorry, the value is recorded as revenue, but has no associated budget related to it. So there was that change, and it was offset by budgeted development cost charge capital work that was 5.6 million under budget due to projects running into 2022, specifically the Allendale and the Latoria and VMP roundabout projects. So again, similar to my last comment, the majority of the developer contribution revenue does not affect the general operating surplus for the year, as it is related to TCAs and revenue that is transferred to reserves. So moving to expenses, so this is the center set of blocks in the slide. Total expenses are 26.4 million, and they're $3 million under budget. So I'm just going to highlight a few of the notable variances. So overall, salaries, wages, and benefits were under budget nearly 700,000 as a result of turnover and vacancies. The two largest areas were for the RCMP West Shore detachment and in the parks area. Overall, training and professional development was under budget by 94,000 as a result of the continued impact of COVID-19 and how that's affected travel. Special initiatives we're $1.8 million under budget as a result of reprioritization or the projects are in progress. So special initiatives are not funded through revenue, but through surplus and reserves. So this amount does not affect the general operating surplus for the year. So after reviewing the revenue and expenses, we come to an annual surplus of 15.9 million. And I'm going to actually talk about that on the next slide as well. So the last slide with numbers, this is a slide that shows the composition of the city's accumulated surplus for 2021 as compared to 2020. The detailed amounts for this slide are included on page 64 of the agenda, which is page 17 of the financial statements document. So the highlights are, as you can tell, the majority of our accumulated surplus is invested in the city's infrastructure. So 84% for accumulated surplus. The value of all of the city's assets is 168 million, and then we reduce it by the outstanding debt financing related to the assets of 7.9 million, and that's how we come up to the just over 160 million. The next line, speaking to reserves, so the city has 18.5 million in reserves set aside for specific purpose, either by bylaw or council resolution. These reserves increased nearly 1.9 million in 2021 as a result of 3.8 million transferred in and 1.9 million transferred out to fund projects. Noteworthy changes with respect to individual reserve balances. Community amenities net increase of 573,000. The affordable housing reserve saw 463,000 increase, and the sustainable infrastructure reserve saw an 863,000 net increase. The next line item there is the internally restricted for specific purpose. This amount of nearly 4.1 million is comprised of 1.4 million in unspent COVID-19 Safe Restart grant funds and 2.7 million of gas tax funding. So there's more detailed information on both these amounts included in note 14 to the financial statements or page 65 of the agenda. So the next line item that I know is of importance is the total operating surplus. So this amount is 7.1 million for the end of 2021, and that's comprised of sewer fund operating surplus of 420,000, which is 23,000 less than 2020, and general fund operating surplus of 6.7 million, of which just over 750,000 related to 2021 operations. As council may recall, your resolution from January 24th of this year, we will be transferring 50,000 of this general operating surplus to a public art or to the public art reserve as per your resolution. So that gets us right total of just over 190 million for accumulated surplus at the end of 2021. So that's it. So hopefully I didn't go into too much detail for you. I'm happy to answer any questions that I'm able to. I do have the recommendation up on the screen there, and then we do have Corey from MNP going to present on the audit findings report after this item as well.
Thank you. I have Councillor Day, then Kobayashi, then Parkinson.
Thank you. I just have a few questions that are related to specific pages. On page 13, in the employee future benefits notes to the consolidated financial statements, there is a service cost listed of $81,000 for this year. What is the service cost?
I'm just catching up with you, Councillor Dace,
Sure,
through
no
your worship.
problem.
So just a second here, I'm just looking at that page.
Page 13 of your report.
Okay. And sorry, the amount you were quoting was a service cost.
Service cost, second
yeah.
line at the top of the page.
Yeah. So this amount relates to let's see if I can articulate it in a way that makes sense, because this comes from our actuarial evaluation. So Mercer does an actuarial evaluation for us on an annual basis with a thorough review every third year. Now, I don't know if I will do this justice, but when they look at this, they look at the balance at the beginning of the year. They determine how much is related to service that the employees have accumulated since like basically during that fiscal year. And then they also add, as you can note, there's an interest cost, and then they reduce it by the amount of benefit that was paid out at the end of the year as well. So that's where those numbers come from. They come from that actuarial evaluation. So the service cost would be, like I mentioned, the service, the potential payment as a result of the service that was accumulated during the year by the employees.
Okay, I think I get that one.
Okay.
My next question is on page 15.
Okay, I am there.
And again, it's the second item at the top of the page under cost, the additions of 6.6 million.
Okay, yeah, through your worship to Councillor Day, that is the work in progress. So that is all of the capital projects that were in progress at the end of the year that we did not capitalize. So anything specific, let me think if I can, I don't have them off the top of my head, but I would say the Allendale Works project, and there were several of them this year. That's why you're seeing a high dollar value. So that amount will always include any projects that span multiple years that we have not completed, so they cannot be capitalized and considered an addition in one of the other TCA areas for the year.
Okay, great. That helps me a lot. And my next question is on page 17. And there was internal financing for the central sewer local area services, which is to be recovered of $96,740. And I'm just wondering when that will be paid back.
Excellent question, through your worship to Councillor Day. Let me, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I think I have the answer to that in a different document that I have open here.
Okay.
Okay. And if the CFO or Director of Finance, Jen, knows that off the top of her head, I'm also happy for her to interject.
Through your worship, it is either the year 2038 or 2046. We will confirm. But ultimately, the city had a number of loan authorization bylaws and short-term loans outstanding before the works were ultimately commenced and finished for the central local area sewer. So all the while we were paying the debt servicing for those, and we're now going to tie the repayment with the long-term debt issue for that area, which was a 30-year term. And for central, I believe it is 2046.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you. And just probably a housekeeping item, but on page 21, there is a date, a presentation of the financial statements of May 13th. And I think you were just early, and I just thought I'd mention that you'll need to update your draft.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, I believe sorry, on page, was it page 21 that you quoted?
Yes, page 21, first
Okay.
line at the top,
Yeah.
or second line at the top under 19 budget.
Okay, thank you. That's actually references the date that the 2021 to 2025 financial plan was adopted by council last year.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you for that.
Okay, and last question is the expenses for staff that we report. Does that include our portion of the West Shore Parks and Rec because it's consolidated?
Yes, all of what we present in the financial statements includes our portion of the expenses related to West Shore Parks and Rec Society, yes.
Even their staffing?
All of, so anything that flows through their financial statements, our portion, our 21.25% is included in that.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Marley, congratulations. Your enthusiasm was phenomenal. Had me excited. You answered most of my questions, but I just have a couple here. I noticed something in our PILT, or what you call it now, payment in place of taxes now. I noticed that it's dropped like 9% year over year. I don't know if this is a trend. Can you explain what's happening here? Are we losing something here, or people not wanting to pay as much, or we're going to see a downward trend in this? That's my first question.
Through your worship to Councillor Kobayashi, I am going to do my best to explain. And again, if Jen wants to add anything, I welcome her to do that. With respect to that line item specifically, the actual 2021 PILT, or payment in place of tax revenue for the year, was actually 292,000 over what we had budgeted.
Oh.
And the reason why it's showing as a decrease is, as council may recall, during the Q3 financial update that was presented last year, Jen had mentioned that we had a potential liability related to a federal property that they make a payment in place of taxes for. So that's why the actual amount for 2021 seems like it's under budget in reality, and that's because we booked that potential liability. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Just
Okay.
hit the light switch on and off a few times and it finally stays on. Thank you.
Great.
So my second question is, I know you did mention this when you were reviewing this, just about the school taxes. So it, went back up 20% again. So that's the level we're going to expect in the future. So we got that break in 2020. I think that's what you stated, correct? Is that correct? So it jumped up like 20% in 2021. So is that because now they're making us pay the full bill, or is there something else in this?
Yeah, your worship, through to Councillor Kobayashi, I don't know if you're talking about the specific tax revenue or the amount that the residents are charged for the school tax. I do know that the province did decrease the school tax during COVID, and that I can't speak to what they will continue to do in the future, but I would say it appears that temporary decrease in the school tax for the revenue for the year, yes.
Yeah,
and then the other
collections on behalf of other governments, right?
Yes, yeah. And specifically to what I spoke about in my presentation was related to the amount that was payable at the end of 2021 versus 2020, and that was strictly a cash flow item that the province, due to cash flow as a result of COVID, had allowed municipalities to remit their school tax amounts that they had collected later, whereas in 2021 that wasn't the case.
Thanks. And last question, and just make me smarter right now. The government collects carbon tax on us right now, right? And is that come through as the gas tax? So how does that filter down to us right now? Do we see any of that carbon tax revenue as a municipality?
Your worship, through to Councillor Kobayashi again, I would say, were you talking about provincial or federal?
Provincial.
Okay, so provincial related, and in previous years, there has been what they called a CARIP program, where we received a small amount. I believe in 2020, it was between $8,000 and $9,000. That was related to a report that we would submit that showed basically what the what we generated for GHGs as a municipal operation, and they would net it out and then give us funding. My understanding is the province is changing that funding model, but that there's been no announcement made yet.
How about federal then?
So federal, yes, federal is gas tax. I don't know enough to say whether or not that's directly related to the carbon tax. And that gas tax program is in place until 2024. And my understanding is the federal government is analyzing if they'll be continuing the gas tax program or changing it.
Okay, so that just leads up to my last question then. So we have this line under the line item under reserve funds called climate action, and we only have $58,000 in it. So how come that money why isn't it more, like what's feeding that right now?
Again, the climate action is related to that provincial CARIP program. So the net effect. So, and that is what council has been funding the BC, the rebate top up for the conversion to electrical heating and cooling. That's related to provincial, and then the federal gas tax is included in the internally restricted amount.
Okay, that makes complete sense. Thanks very much, Marley.
You're welcome.
Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Marley, I believe I heard you say at the beginning of your presentation that the proportionate share that Colwood owns of West Shore Parks and Rec Society went down from 2020 to 2021. And if that's the case, I'm wondering why. I know around that time the Wandafuga electoral area left the Wandafuga Parks and Rec, but I would have thought that would bump our ownership up a fraction. What happened to make our ownership go down?
Great question. Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. With respect to the comment about the Wandafuga electoral area, that was actually in 2018 that they were removed from the share of the ownership. It was a slight decrease, so it went from 21.34 to 21.25. And Jen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that they use the, sorry, and I can't think of the title of it right now, but the population base. And my guess then as a result of that is our portion of the population that they use to assign the ownership share was reduced compared to the others, but I'm pleased for Jen to correct me if I'm wrong.
For your worship, I was just looking to see if I could pull it up quickly enough, but I believe it's because Langford is growing at a faster pace than Colwood with respect to the change 2020 to 2021.
So interesting. So our percent ownership changes annually. If the other communities grow a lot faster than us, we end up owning less and less of that asset.
Your worship, through to Councillor Parkinson, that is correct. And actually, just to share with you the amount in 2019, we were at 21.73%. So we dropped from 21.73 to 21.34 and then to 21.25. So
again, and it's just something I'll have to wrap my head around. I guess I understood that the expenses were proportionate to population and assessment in some mechanism. It's strange that something we own would get diluted like that over time just because of population. But if that's the way it's set up, that's the way it's set up. I'll have to ponder on that one. But anyway, thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Well, I was just going to make the motion to move the recommendation, your worship.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Jansen. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 6.4. This is our 2021 draft audited findings report. Ms. Boven, are you introducing this?
Yes, I can do that. Thank you, your worship. So this is Corey Vanderhorst. He's the partner at MMP that's responsible for the city's audit, and I will let him introduce himself further if he'd like to, and otherwise proceed with his presentation.
Great. Thank you, Marley. And please let me know if everybody can hear me. I have had technical difficulties over the last week or so with a new laptop. So if
Yeah, no, we can hear you fine.
perfect, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to the Mayor and Council for having me here tonight to present. I do have a short presentation, so I'm going to share screen. So you should be able to see the first slide with the coffee cup.
Yeah, we can.
Great, thank you. So firstly, thank you to Marley and Jen and the rest of the finance team and the staff throughout the city for helping us with the audit this year. We're coming in a little hot for the presentations and some of the materials coming to you today. I apologize for that. That's on our end. We have some staffing challenges between various crunches and the pandemic affecting us. So we are here today, though, to go through. So happy to provide another clean audit opinion for the city this year. Our audit responsibilities, we look at the controls in place to ensure accurate reporting. We do not have any concerns to bring to your attention around the internal controls at the city this year. We are satisfied that they are working properly and you're getting accurate reporting. We sampled transactions throughout the year when we're forming our audit opinion. We do not look at every transaction. We use a materiality figure of 1.2 million. So that is based on roughly 4% of your annual revenues. And we look at every transaction over that. So as Marlene mentioned, a lot of the large capital projects and grants and things we would be looking at, and then we sample underneath. We didn't find any irregularities, anything unusual, or any conflict of interest to bring to council's attention tonight. Another thank you to staff. And we also confirm our independence. With respect to the city, we didn't do any other projects or work that would impair our ability to give council an independent audit opinion running from January 1st, 2021, all the way through to today, May 9th, 2022. So thank you. I promise to be short, but I will stop the sharing and I would be happy to answer any questions about the audit process.
Great, thank you. Before I look to questions, staff, what do you need from council about this? I don't have a recommendation. Is this just to receive, or do you actually need a motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. We are looking for a motion. I believe it is highlighted on tonight's council agenda. Ultimately, we are looking for approval of these draft statements as presented, and that the Chief Administrative Officer, myself, and our Manager of Finance be authorized to sign these financial statements.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baxter?
I move the recommendation.
Great, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Jansen. Is there discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to 6.5. This is our 2021 annual development cost charge report. Staff, whoever.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I do not have a presentation for this. As councillors aware, we are required to report on the use and the increase in contributions of the development cost charges on an annual basis. So this is the 2021 development cost charge report. So the activity is shown as Appendix 1, which is page 89 of the agenda. And the one thing I did want to note here, with respect to the 2022 to 2026 financial plan, the city has budgeted over $7.5 million in DCC funding for road infrastructure projects, and council has committed to providing a future DCC credit of $2.2 million to the developer that is undertaking the road improvement project on Latoria from Machosen to Sparrowhawk. So I just wanted to highlight that 2022 amount of $7.5 million, because when you look at the balance on the DCC report, it looks like we have a lot of money, but the majority of that, at least on the road DCC side, has been committed in the current financial plan.
Thank you. Councillor Logan? I move receipt, your worship. Thank you. Second by Councillor Kobayashi. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to 6.6. This is Ms. Collinson regarding the consideration of endorsements for the Colway Creek Park Management Plan, Lookout Lake Park Management Plan, and the Ocean View Park Management Plan.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. So as you know, since last July, we've been working towards creating the park management plans for Colway Creek Park, Lookout Lake Park, and Ocean View Park. We were last in front of you in February with the draft management plans. Direction at that time was given to seek public and stakeholder feedback. So we are here tonight to offer you a summary of what we heard, highlight some edits resulting from the feedback, and then seek your endorsement of each park's management plan. Note a full list of edits is summarized by each management plan page number within your staff report this evening. And I will now turn it over to Vanessa Walton, who is coming to us virtually. She's a project consultant from Lanark who has been assisting the city with this project, and she'll offer you a summary of what we heard during phase 3 of engagement and highlight some plan revisions. Vanessa.
Thank you, Jill, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be joining you again to share a final park management plan update for Colwood Creek, Ocean View, and Lookout Lake Parks. I'll go ahead and share my screen now. Is that coming through okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'll begin with a brief project process update, and then the majority of my presentation will focus on sharing what we heard during the phase 3 public and partner referrals, as well as the key changes made to the plans based on that feedback. And then I'll touch on final steps in the project. So as a reminder of where we are in the overall process, this diagram's a timeline that shows the 3 key phases of the project. So as Jill mentioned, currently we're wrapping up phase 3, where we've shared the draft park management plans with the public and partners and have made final revisions based on that feedback, and are now seeking your last input as we work to complete the project. So we received input during March and April 2022. The draft plans are referred to the public and partners and were available for review on the Let's Talk Colwood page. We also gave a presentation to Esquimalt First Nation on March 16th, and the majority of the comments we received were from community members, but we've also incorporated some comments from city staff, particularly as it relates to operations and maintenance. And then most of the input we received in phase 3, was focused on Colwood Creek Park. So the main feedback areas or areas where information may have resulted in a change to the plans were environmental considerations, operations and maintenance considerations, and pickleball. So now I'll provide a brief summary of the park management plan refinements organized by park. So starting with Lookout Lake Park, the comments we received were very much focused on the natural areas of the park, which is quite consistent with how the rest of the project process has gone to date. And we've made some minor refinements to the plan to reflect those comments. So changes include revisions to language around the natural areas, really an effort to clarify that we're protecting the environment rather than managing it. And those efforts are really should be focused on or near areas where park improvements are taking place. And then a more passive approach could be taken within the sort of less traveled areas of the park, really to let the natural processes take place within the forests and riparian areas around the lake. And then again, emphasizing that all upgrades within the park need to consider protection of habitat areas. We did receive some commentary and concerns about the proposed upgraded north path connection. So kind of from T to T on this map here. And so we've revised that recommendation really to emphasize that further detailed feasibility review should be undertaken prior to implementation of that trail connection. And so we're imagining that could include things like reviewing and minimizing impacts to trees and habitat areas. And visually on the plan map, it now kind of is shown as a dashed line to indicate future trail connection is pending further review. For Ocean View Park, the main changes made to the plan really were largely integrating the comments we received from the parks and operations staff, most of which were related to the washroom building. So, which is located here on the plan shown. Staff provided ideas about consideration for maintenance and operations around the washroom building, specifically kind of interior fixtures and finishes for ease of maintenance, as well as provision of storage areas. And then there were ideas shared about potential to integrate consistent interior fixtures and finishes for all of Colwood's Park washroom buildings, really for ease of maintenance, operations, and efficiency. So that was another change we made to the recommendation. We also expanded the maintenance access route to in and around the washroom building. And then we provided a clarification around servicing of the existing washroom building. So further study by city staff kind of revealed some potential high cost implications with providing full sewer connections into the park to accommodate kind of a full service flushable facility. So our recommendation has been revised slightly to consider potential composting or pit toilets in the short term, with potential to upgrade those to full service longer term once a full sewer connection may be established. Moving on now to Collard Creek Park, but staying with the theme of operations and maintenance. Again, we made revisions to the plan to integrate the comments we received from city staff. So in a similar vein to Ocean View, the comments again were largely related to the washroom building facility. So again, looking at strategies to streamline maintenance practices and integrate better vehicle access to and around the building. And then the proposed building, I should say. And similarly to Ocean View Park, again, a consideration due to the cost of full sewer connection into the park to provide pit toilets in the short term with longer term upgrades to full service. We did note, however, that given that Colwood Creek Park is a community park and the levels of usage, it should be considered as a priority for full service washroom facility over perhaps Ocean View or other parks within the city. For Colwood Creek, there were also some community members who provided input regarding the treatment of the natural areas within the draft park management plan. Specifically, some comments related to protecting the riparian areas around Colwood Creek in the short term in advance of the longer term restoration practices taking place to the riparian areas. In order to address that comment, we've suggested to implement additional regulatory signage specifically related to limiting off-leash dogs in the sensitive habitat areas around the creek. Currently in the park, those areas aren't well signed as it relates to off-leash dog activity along the creek. So we think that could be a good first step in the interim prior to the longer term, more permanent fence strategies being implemented. And then we've also suggested some minor revisions to the stormwater management recommendations. And those are really to provide consideration for a more holistic approach to the stormwater management actions. So thinking about combining those with the riparian restoration planning rather than undertaking one-off projects, really understanding how to tackle seasonal flooding and restoration in a coordinated, holistic way. And I've saved the best for last. So far and away, the most comments we received were related to the addition of pickleball courts in Colwood Creek Park. As a refresher, the draft park management plans recommended implementation of 2 pickleball courts on the Sunridge Valley Drive side of the park, just kind of south of the existing parking lot as shown here. And really the justification for the addition of those in phase 3 was following the phase 2 engagement, which we found the public or those who responded were generally supportive of adding pickleball within the park in that phase. Although at that time we should note there was no specific location discussed. And then as well, implementing new pickleball courts in Colwood's parks is also a key recommendation within the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. In phase 3 of the process, though, we did hear significant concerns surrounding pickleball, some support, but mostly comments were related to concerns from neighbors of the park regarding location and noise impacts. So while there was some support to keep pickleball within the park, but located elsewhere, I would say the majority of respondents preferred to see pickleball, excuse me, in a different location than Colwood Creek Park altogether. So again, this was quite in contrast to what we heard during phase 2. So we feel at this point there are 2 potential options to address these concerns moving forward that we'd like to put forth for council consideration this evening. The first being to remove that recommendation from the plan altogether. And the second, which is what's currently suggested and supported by city staff, is to revise the recommendation, which we have done on pages 36 to 37 of the management plan document. So we've changed the title to Consider Future Pickleball Courts Within the Park. And that sort of frames the recommendation more to add an additional action to consider undertaking future public engagement, just to really confirm that level of support, if any, and potential location for pickleball within Colwood Creek Park. Just really given that there was that mixed support between phase 2 and 3, we do feel this additional future engagement is really warranted. And then potential future implementation would be more medium to long term of the courts and very much dependent on the results of the suggested engagement phase.
So sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Would there be any benefit for council to have that discussion immediately and then they continue on with the presentation, or do you want us to listen to the entire presentation before we come back to pickleball?
There's just a few more slides that talk about 2 potential locations, and then that's kind of it. So I think we could head to.
Then we'll keep going now.
Okay, thank you. So we did provide 2 potential locations for future discussion and engagement, along with list of opportunities and challenges for each one. So it's important to note that there would be additional design considerations, of course, needed for each location. Location 1 was what was presented previously as part of the phase 3 park management plan draft, and 2 is a new suggested location. So opportunities really for the first location are that it's level, flat, well drained and open with very few existing trees in the area, really good proximity to supporting park amenities like the washroom building, picnic shelter and parking. And then with conversion of the Sunridge Valley Drive side of the park to on leash, we feel this is kind of a really safe space for people to be able to park and access the courts easily. Challenges here, of course, really being the key is noise and proximity to the residential neighbors. We did list some noise mitigation strategies in the draft plan. So those included things like requirement for only specific paddles that reduce noise. We learned that it's more so the paddle than the ball that's causing the noise, as well as sound dampening fencing, no early morning or evening use, but kind of despite those, the noise concern really was still commonly voiced. And then the other challenge here being that it does reduce open area for more informal park activities like lawn games or picnics or movies in the park. Second location over towards the Cecil Blogg Drive side of the park near Veterans Memorial Parkway, we feel has good proximity to the new off-street parking area that would be implemented along Cecil Blogg Drive. And then it's also level and sort of flat and free of existing trees. And then we feel the adjacency to the parkway could actually benefit in terms of noise dampening from the vehicle noise. And then less neighbors are impacted by this location. And it doesn't necessarily pose a reduction to the area of the off-leash zone, which some other potential locations we considered would have done. Challenges include that detailed drainage study would need to be done in order to really understand the seasonal impacts as related to the wetland to the north. And then, of course, less proximity to the other park amenities, which we are suggesting are more so clustered on the Sunridge Valley Drive side of the park. And then there is proximity to the dog off-leash areas for users who may not want to interact with off-leash dogs. There is, however, this kind of fenced buffer with the stormwater management pond that is being proposed. So with that, next steps within the process would be to make any last necessary revisions and finalize the plan following your input and discussion this evening, and then to begin to implement the recommendations within the plans. So thank you so much for your time, and we welcome your questions and feedback.
Great, thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
Yep. Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a quick question, Jill. I know when we initially engaged the public, in the questionnaires, it was varied depending on which park you're dealing with, and I wouldn't say it was an overwhelming response, but how about when you did the second session with the feedback through Let's Talk Colwood? How many people participated in that? Was it same sort of numbers, or could you tell me?
Through your worship. So within each park management plan, there's a section, let's see, in Colwood Creek, it's on page 6 or 107 of your agenda tonight, and it provides a summary of just the phase 3. So for instance, with the phase 3 referrals for Colwood Creek Park, we sent out 40 direct stakeholder and user group emails. We heard back from roughly half of them from the referral process, and actually with each park draft management plan, we sent postcards to immediate residents as well. We heard back 26 comments specifically for Colwood Creek. Most were pickleball focused. Some that came in were very positive. And so it did range. Because this has been a 7 to 8 month process, that there's been multiple engagement within the park, online, over the phone, at the counter. At this point, not receiving a lot of response is probably a good thing. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. So second question has to do with pickleball. So for the site 2, that will affect the people that live on Cecil Blog. And okay, so I think I heard you guys say the people that lived on the other side for site 1, there was a lot of negative feedback. But did you hear from the people that live along Cecil Blog and what they thought of site 2?
So through your worship, site 2 has been brought in with this most recent rendition. Because there was such excited input for the site 1 location, an alternative location was sought and is offered tonight. So this site 2 location has not been publicly vetted per se. That being said, the original consideration for pickleball was an immediate term action in the draft plan in February. It's now been moved to a medium to long-term action, as well as a series of public engagement and other considerations if this is moved in the future. So those are highlighted on the bottom of page 36 of the plan, or 137 of the agenda package.
Okay, thanks very much, Joe.
Thank you. I'll go Councillor Parkinson, then Day.
Thank you, Chair. As the council rep on West Shore Parks and Rec Society, I'm really happy to report they've been starting to have some very positive discussions about pickleball on the Parks and Rec site. They've met with a pickleball group who's interested in fundraising and working with them, not replacing tennis courts, but building new facilities. So I think that probably for quite some time, the future of pickleball should be at the rec center, which is really a natural place for it. Has all the advantages of the sites that were mentioned in Colwood Creek Park. So on that, at the appropriate time, I'd be prepared to move the recommendation to have no pickleball at Colwood Creek Park.
Thank you. Actually, Councillor Parkinson, I'm going to ask you a question. I know the dry floor, when it was a curling rink, they were using it at one point for pickleball, but do you know, have they moved past that?
No, it's still, you can still book it for pickleball.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So I concur with the concerns for pickleball, and not because I'm against pickleball at all. It's just that the Colwood Creek Park area really amplifies sound. I know when I've spoken directly to people from the area, you know, they complain about people talking on their cell phones outside because they can hear them clear across the park. So I think it's a natural place for activities, but maybe not for noisy activities, because it's going to create some conflicts. And I think that pickleball is an excellent sport that's very helpful in getting people active. And one of our long-term clients has lost like 50 pounds by playing very much pickleball. So, I mean, it's a wonderful thing in the right place. I just think Colwood Creek Park is probably not the place for it. So I certainly support pickleball, but in the right place. And I know there's a lot of emerging information about pickleball, including what makes it hard to live with and what makes it easier to live with, as in types of paddles and things like that. So I'm sure as we get to know pickleball better in other areas, we'll maybe find places where we can incorporate more opportunities for pickleball. But I think for this point in time, Colwood Creek Park is probably not the best choice.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson, my apologies. Did you make that motion to do it? I should have.
I did not. I just suggested I'd be happy to once everybody had a chance to discuss.
Okay.
Or now
Great.
I feel like your call. So.
Okay, so yeah, so sorry, I don't have anyone else, so I'll let you make that motion now.
Okay, I'm just flipping through the agenda for trying to find what it should say, because sometimes when I go through the package, what's in the agenda is a little different. So me bad. Oh dear.
Yeah, what you could do is move the staff recommendation and amend the consideration for pickleball infrastructure to presently be at West Shore Park and Rec.
How about, yeah, the staff recommendation and amend the consideration to remove pickleball infrastructure at Colwood Creek from the Colwood Creek Park Management Plan.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. So that will take us to or is there more?
We got the other two parks, I think, don't we?
Oh, my apologies. Okay. Do I have so I need another motion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Parkins.
No, I gotta find it again.
Do you know? I can leave to someone else.
But that council endorsed.
Yeah, I thought the staff recommendation encompassed it all, but okay, so I don't need another motion.
Good.
I saw that. She's running away real quick. All right, so we're gonna 6.6 is concluded. We're gonna move to 6.7 now, which is Ms. Buskey regarding our economic recovery program coordinator, economic recovery to BRIA, and prioritizing of actions.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Or not, there we go. Thank you. The purpose of this presentation this evening is to seek Council's direction on the prioritization of the business retention, expansion and attraction actions for implementation in 2022. The available resources in this program are staff time through until the end of December 2022 and a remaining budget of around $20,000. So we've had to choose really carefully about which actions we're going to work on for the remainder of this year. Just to give you some context here, British Columbia and the Capital Region has seen an economic rebound since the global pandemic, and we're now above pre-pandemic levels for retail sales. Inflation has accelerated with a 6% increase in the consumer price index. Greater Victoria has got one of the lowest unemployment rates in Canada at the moment of just 4.1%. And in the last 6 months since September, the main drivers of employment growth have been in the retail trade, in construction, healthcare and social assistance, and information, culture and recreation. And although these figures are really positive, businesses are still experiencing some uncertainty associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, at the end of April, the number of people in hospital had dropped slightly from 570 down to 550 people, but conversely, the number of deaths had increased over a 7-day period from 42 to 50. So we're still in the COVID pandemic situation, and we still have people being infected in the community, or rather testing positively, I should say. Housing affordability is apparently constraining the ability of businesses to attract new employees. And another thing that's making things a bit more challenging for businesses is that as from the 1st of January 2022, BC employees are now entitled to up to 5 days paid sick leave and 3 unpaid days of sick leave. And so this is having another effect on our business community. And so in that context, both positive news and not as positive news, we really wanted to look at the tactics that we could achieve with the 1 staff member through to the end of the year and the remaining funds. And so you may remember that in the BRIA strategy report, in the phase 3 report that was brought to you earlier this year, there are multiple actions and tactics that we could select here. But the 2 tactics that we wanted to focus on for the rest of the year under the business retention and expansion actions was to develop an inventory of programs, services and funding that businesses may need to support expansion in the city. And this should include available workforce development programs, research and development, educational institutions, general information that would be useful for our businesses, and to put that in one location on potentially the website. And then the second action would be to continue to follow up with the green and red flagged companies that were brought to us as a result of the survey that was undertaken for BRIA. And those would be the business retention and expansion actions that we would like to focus on. And then we have 3 tactics we would like to look at in the investment attraction actions. One of them would be to work with the real estate community and relevant property owners to make an inventory of accessible commercial properties. And so potentially being able to link these through the city's website. Another tactic would be to continue strengthening the existing network of local, regional, and provincial stakeholder relationships to ensure leads flow to Colwood. And we've been working with SIP, South Island Prosperity Partnership there to increase Colwood's profile through their marketing. And then the final tactic to maintain a comprehensive community profile and target sector profiles to support marketing and promotion activities. And those are the things that we believe we can work on this year with the remaining budget. We would like to be able to use that budget to put together a web page that links through to the city's website that actually shows where we have commercial available property, for example, at Allendale, Intra-Urban, Royal Beach and Royal Bay, and that would be the concept. And just going very quickly to the recommendation, just if we could get council's direction on whether these actions and tactics are the ones that council would like to see moving forward to the end of December 2022. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
I'd like to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Jansen. Discussion? Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you. I'm a little concerned about under investment attraction actions, action 1, tactic 1, work with the local real estate community and relevant property owners, inventory, make accessible data on targeted properties, etc. I just wonder if we're not playing both sides of the street there. If somebody comes along and says, you know, I want to build an abattoir, and we go, yeah, here's 6 sites, and then we find out that nobody in the town wants an abattoir near them, you know, are we sort of positioning ourselves to look like we're leading people down the garden path? I think the real estate guys in town do a very good job of knowing what property is available and what it could be used for. And I think my understanding is our city and our staff are open and helpful to people who come in with different ideas. So I have some concerns about that tactic. I just don't know if any of the other councillors feel the same way or not.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Parkinson, would you like staff to comment at all on that, on your comment?
As always, of course, yeah.
Okay. Does any staff member wish to comment? Well, nobody wants to comment, Councillor Parkinson. I'm kidding. Councillor Borhill. Excuse me, Mr. Borhill, you're not a councillor.
I'll take it. Thank you, Worship, and through to Councillor Parkinson's question. Staff often deal with commercial real estate brokers who are in competition that have a focus on a certain aspect of the market, and we feel that this tactic would get at the heart of what we see as essentially a market failure, where there's a lack of focus on Colwood specific opportunities. We don't think it would be a lot of work to pull from the existing resources that exist within the commercial real estate sector in their websites and their contacts to really shine a light on Colwood opportunities.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson, anything else before I go to the next? Councillor?
No, I'll listen to their advice.
Great, thank you. Councillor Day, then Kobayashi. Oh, sorry. Come on, go. There you go.
There we go. I feel like this is trying to cover something that's kind of already covered. In my experience, there's a lot of informal connections within the community, and particularly between specific real estate offices or specific real estate agents and certain landowners or certain areas of the capital region. So I'm just concerned that there's a high potential for not much benefit and potentially quite a bit of downside because most property transactions are something you don't widely talk about until the deal is done. So I do have concerns. I would wish that our financial plan to help businesses to establish in Colwood would be more reflective of what our citizens would like to have close to home. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. The very first action 1, tactic 2, I agree that we probably do need an inventory of programs, services, and fund. That's a good thing to have for a city when people come knocking on the door and they're looking, you know, how can I leverage my business? What do you have locally? I know I've done this with the city of Kelowna. But the one area that I think is sort of like, it's not really our responsibility. And that is the next part of it, where you said this should include available workforce development programs. Well, there's specialists in government that come in and tell us what they all are. It's like it's available. And the other things like R&D funding, like SHRED and IRAP and all that, they have specialists that come to us for free. We just have to pick up the phone and say, come in and tell us all the programs. So it just seems like I'm not too sure what we're trying to do here. Like we seem to be repeating something someone else has already done or can do for us. So you're just coordinating this? Is that what the vision is here?
Your Worship, happy to provide a response, and Ms. Bosky, please by all means jump in if necessary. So I believe the reference to the workforce programs where was to include them in the listing of what's available. We do have local organizations such as WorkLink that provide services to the community, and I think the reference was just to make sure that they would be included in a list of programs.
Okay, so you're coordinating all this. Then.
Correct.
So you're not repeating what's already, okay,
correct.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. So we do have a motion on the table, which is the staff recommendation. I will call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. So that motion passes. Moving on to 6.8, this is Aaron Knudsen. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. This is regarding development cost charge credits for Latoria Road Works, Gablecraft.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes, I'm Aaron Knudsen, and I'll be presenting just a short PowerPoint on the development cost charges that Gablecraft is seeking. So let me just share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. All right, so Gablecraft has submitted a request for council to consider a DCC, a roads development cost charge credit for a small portion of works that are located on Latoria Road, just, I would say, west of sort of Ryder Hedgehall Way. You can sort of see the location in the image on this first slide here. So just getting into some background, I thought it would be good just to sort of refresh where we are at with the DCCs in relation to Latoria Road and Latoria Boulevard. You can see in the blue section here that's clouded in the blue area is the Machosen and Latoria signalization project, which also includes the bus exchange on Latoria Boulevard. This has already been previously considered, and a cash expenditure has been authorized by council previously. The area beside that in the sort of cyan color is I actually said bus exchange here, but that's incorrect. It's just Latoria Boulevard improvements from Sparrowhawk to I guess it's the intersection limits of that project. The orange area is again Latoria Boulevard from Sparrowhawk to Ryder Hedgehall. That one is not under construction yet and does not have any previous credits or DCC cash consideration. The green area is the project for Latoria Road from Ryder Hedgehall Way all the way to Wishart Road. And the subject location of this report and the request from Gablecraft lies within this green area. You can see which is highlighted in the pink area. All right, just moving on to the recommendations. We've come up with 3 recommendations that we're offering to council for consideration. Number 1 is accept developers' request for a DCC credit in the estimated amount of $237,000 for Latoria Road improvement works located at 370 and 396 Latoria Road as part of the DCC project noted in Schedule B of bylaw number 1836 as Latoria Road, Machosen Road to Wishart Road. Or deny the developer's request for a DCC credit in the estimated amount of $237,000 for Latoria Road improvement works located at 370 and 396 Latoria Road as part of the DCC project noted in Schedule B of bylaw 1836 as Latoria Road, Machosen Road to Wishart Road, or direct staff to return to council with additional information. A little bit more information on the works that are actually being proposed for DCC credits. As you can see on this slide here, we're at Latoria Road. To the left of the screen is Wishart Road. To the right of the screen is Machosen Road. And what I'm calling here is Quarry Road, which is a new internal road going into the Southlands where the future fire hall will be. and as well the temporary location of the Sequoia Coffee Shop once it relocates from its current location. So some of the works that they're offering right now to construct for DCC credit is the curbs from the basically Quarry Road here, just past the curb returns on each side, just to sort of give a better presence to the intersection there. The sidewalk letdowns in their ultimate location on both sides of this intersection here. They're looking at doing a little bit more storm drainage to enclose some of the existing ditches. So a little bit of storm drain here with a catch basin. Some asphalt pavement. The asphalt pavement limits would more or less be restricted to the center line for DCC credit eligibility at this point, largely because the pavement that's to the north of center line is most likely not going to be able to be put in ultimate location as there's future road widening to be done at this intersection to create that four lane, 5 lane cross section. And then getting into some of the conclusions that were made, staff is in support of this proposal, largely due to there are some significant grade differences from the existing elevation of Latoria Road and the new Quarry Road that goes internal into the Southlands. And to best deal with those grade changes and make a better, safe sort of functioning intersection for pedestrians and traffic, it would be best to address those grade changes now, which basically means we have to lower Latoria Road by, I believe it's about 1.5 feet. Also, completing the works now, such as like the sidewalk letdowns, would definitely provide a better pedestrian-friendly interface for that intersection. Should function much safer, especially if people from, say the high school are going to cross Latoria and go to the new Sequoia Coffee Shop location. Also, installing some of the works in their ultimate location now makes a lot of sense because they'll be installed in their ultimate location. Therefore, we wouldn't have to remove any interim works now to only have to install future works in the ultimate location. And that's about it. I'll just leave the recommendations here on the screen and turn it over to the mayor and council for discussion. I'll be here for questions, as well as the Director of Engineering, John Rosenberg. If you have any questions, just let us know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Councillor Jansen, then Parkinson, and then I'll come back to council. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Worship. It makes sense to me. I'll move number 1 staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Logan. Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship. I was going to move the motion too. I think as council, we have to be a little bit careful that we don't cede the DCC timing completely to the development community, that we have we started a list of when projects should be done and not be done. But while having said that, this one makes too much sense to not proceed at this point. And we'll get lots of DCC credits from this developer over the years to make everything whole and to work on projects in a more orderly fashion. So I support option 1 in the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I have a question. I couldn't tell from the pictures. Does the sidewalk that would be part of this crosswalk, sorry, saying the wrong thing, connect to the perimeter park path to Murray's Pond?
Sure, I'll address that question there, Councillor Day. As you can see here at the top of the image here, there's a pathway that's coming across the screen and then leading to this crosswalk. The intent is to have this as a temporary sort of pathway to connect up to the Murray's Pond path that goes in behind the school. So just to create that linkage for anybody coming from the Northlands in Royal Bay, as well as, you know, like I said, the schools, the students.
And in that location where it's drawn, there's currently, I believe, a two-way bike path right there. Is that remaining, being disturbed, staying, going?
I'm not familiar with a two-way bike path in this exact location now. I believe that we're looking to do a separated bikeway in the future as part of the road widening in this intersection. Can you elaborate where the?
Sure, it's right at the base of the path that goes to Murray's Pond. They built kind of an easier path for the bikes because there's no bike lanes on Latoria Road as yet between Wishart and the school, really. So they put the two on one side.
So, like, as I understand it, there's this pathway here, which I was speaking about, that's going to link up to the pathway that comes across for the crosswalk.
Yeah.
And then there's only just a single sidewalk and a bike lane on the road along this section here.
Yeah, so right where your mouse is right now to where
Yep.
the pink bubble is, there's a short stretch of two-way bike path.
That is news to me. I am unfamiliar with that two-way bike path in that location. I know that we have a little piece of Latoria Road existing, but
Yeah, no, it's sort of between where the houses have their little side road that comes off and where it comes up to the path. But I'm fine with leaving it as is, but I'm just concerned for the crosswalk and the functionality in the short term.
well, I'll definitely take note of your comments there and work towards integrating that into the design once we actually finalize a drawing for this, and definitely proof it out in the field to make sure there's no issues with disconnecting that pathway.
Super, thank you.
You're welcome.
Aaron, I think I've misunderstood something here. I think you said that the work is only on the get my directions right, the south side of Latoria, but that part of Latoria is being dropped by about 1.5 feet.
Yeah. So I would say the work that's being considered for DCC credits is only occurring on the south side. There will be work that's going to be done on the north side, but those will have to be adjusted in the future when we go to actually widen the road to the 5-lane cross section. So it's not part of the $237,000 consideration.
Oh, okay, I get it now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
Anything else? Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. So I will call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 6.9. This is the 2022 Climate Leaders Institute.
Thank you, Worship. As outlined in the self-explanatory memo before you, members of Council have been invited to attend the 2022 Climate Leaders Institute. This is an in-person event for elected leaders of BC local governments, scheduled for June 8th through the 10th, 2022, and to be held at the Vancouver campus of UBC. Staff note that this may be of special interest to Council given the expected presentation of the draft low carbon resiliency plan, as mentioned earlier, scheduled also for June of this year. This item is simply for council's information, but I'm happy to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no questions, what I would recommend to council is if you are interested in attending, to speak to Nora Brooks, and Nora can make the proper arrangements by registering you and getting you a hotel room and things along those lines. I'm not seeing any questions, so thank you, Mr. Borhill. We're going to move on then to 7 bylaws. This is 7.1, bylaw number 1909, off-street parking regulations. This is for 3rd reading. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day, Councillor Kobayashi, oppose. Moving on to 7.2, bylaw number 1916, land use amendment. This is off-street parking regulations. This is for 3rd reading. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day and Councillor Kobayashi oppose. Moving on to 7.3, bylaw number 1933, public notice bylaw. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Jansen. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.4, this is bylaw number 1935, tax rate bylaw. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Kobayashi, or excuse me, Councillor Jansen. Discussion? Seeing none. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.5, bylaw number 1938, 2022, Colwood Sewer Utility Bylaw. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Logan. Any in opposition? Nobody opposes. Good night, everybody.